Welcome to today's outbreak video. Today's outbreak is going to be the one that occurred from May 26th to May 31st of 2013. Not to be confused with the one that ended on May 26th of 2011. And we will be paying special attention to the monster that is the Reno EF5 later on, of course. A small overview, as usual. There were 115 confirmed tornadoes over the course of 5.4 days, so 5.25 days. There were 9 tornadic fatalities, 18 non-tornadic fatalities. 172 people were injured because of this event. This event also produced 5 intense and 1 violent tornado, and there will be 4 notables here. Before that, of course, I also want to do a time frame. It's a relatively long time frame because on May 22nd, an east-moving low was stalled by a high pressure. 2 days later, ingredients congregate for tornadoes to occur: your shear, your lift, your cape, slim. From May 27th and the 28th, a slight risk was issued despite widespread twisters being reported later in the day. And this was rectified the next day, on May 29th. A moderate risk was issued, along with a 10% tornado chance. 2 days later, a strong cap was in place, and there were dews in the 70s. CAPE was in excess of 4,000 joules per kilogram, and a PDS tornado watch was issued. This strong cap would later completely break. Our first notable, hold on, let's see. I have no pictures of the twister. Darn it. Sorry about that. Let me restart here. Our first notable here is the Lebanon to Esbond, Kansas EF3. This tornado, seen here on velocity radar, tracked 9.24 kilometers and had a width of 1.4 kilometers maximum, which is just short of a mile, and caused $5.3 million in damage. Being nearly a mile wide, that happens to be what's called very large, and this thing also, of course, happened to be rain-wrapped, so it would appear much larger. Grain bins were totaled, as seen with this picture here that I have, and as well as damage indicators. Tornado Intercept Vehicle 2 intercepted this tornado and managed to record 190 mile-per-hour winds, which would make this a very high-end EF4, actually. But for some reason, it's only rated as an EF3. I believe that was because these winds were recorded with satellites. Which is a little unusual, by the way, because EF3s don't normally produce strong satellites. The second notable here occurred north-northeast of Bennington, Kansas, and it was an EF3. The path, as you can see here, is the breast cancer symbol turned sideways, because of course it is, and also went all sorts of ways along the compass, because Mother Nature wants to mix things up, of course. This thing had a max width of 910 meters, though. Managed to course an impressive 15.11 kilometers in an hour. Wow. As you can imagine, the breast cancer symbol turned sideways is in an extremely unusual path for a tornado, and is seen here on a GIF of radar that has been repeating for the last however long. Doppler on Rio's recorded winds of 247, or almost 400 kilometers per hour. Sorry, 247 miles per hour, or almost 400 kilometers per hour, which would, I'm pretty sure that would be EF4. Actually, that would be EF5, now that I'm thinking about it, but you know what? I'm sticking with the official ratings, except for only one of them, so you know. Ground winds from this tornado exceeded 165 miles per hour, which is 265 kilometers per hour. That is definitely very strong and is definitely EF3. In fact, that may actually be EF4 now that I think about it. So why this thing is rated EF3, I have no idea. Our third notable, which is going to have two parts to it, is the one that we are paying special attention to, the Reno EF5. Now, you know how I was saying that I was sticking to official ratings? This one here is the only one that I will never say was an EF3, like it is officially rated by the NWS. This thing was an EF5, and you cannot prove me wrong. Damage indicators be damned. In the grand scheme of notables that I've covered before, this thing has a less than impressive path of 26.1 kilometers. However, we don't need to talk about the track. We need to talk about the shape of that track, which we will in a little bit. This tornado killed 8 people and injured 151, and is the widest tornado ever, 2.6 miles wide, which I believe, if I remember correctly, 4.2 kilometers wide. This thing was extremely unusual, not just because there's an EF5, but look at the shape of this track and look at the speeds. This top path here has the speeds that it was at. The speeds that it was going at, I should say. Look, tell me what is wrong about this. The answer, everything. Everything is wrong with this track. Everything. This thing, of course, being an EF5 NWS, not 3, had many satellites, and even when I was anticyclonic, seen here in this picture of a horseshoe, thank you, Skip Talbot. This tornado is also, unfortunately, the first to ever kill storm chasers. This kind of thing has not happened since, thankfully. No storm chasers have ever been killed by a tornado except for this tornado. On another note, many citizens evacuated El Reno because if you don't know the typical track of a tornado, it is southwest to northeast, so traveling northeast. Based on where this thing starts, you can see that if this thing goes anywhere, if this thing just goes east northeast, it will hit El Reno. Instead, it goes south east because, of course. And so all the highways south of El Reno were completely jammed. If this tornado moved in this particular path right here, where it went up and left and then proceeded to go back down, this thing went up and just stayed there, this thing could have killed 500 people, which is insane to think about and something that I actually don't want to think about, so I won't. I won't have you guys think about that either. Again, second part of the Reno EF5, this thing was highly erratic in the key ways of path and the speed of that path. And while not shown here, also strength. This thing was an extremely consistent EF5. Normally, EF5s are not consistent. They just aren't a lot of the time. Again, look at this thing's path and tell me anything that is normal about it. It does a loop. Do you see this? East of El Reno, it does a loop. That is not normal. The funnel of this tornado was also 10 times smaller than the wind area. For the record, the wind area was 2.6 miles wide. That is the main body of the tornado. The wind field does extend further than that, but that's the main body. The funnel was 10 times smaller than that. You're not supposed to see that picture. Darn it. We'll get to that in just a little bit. We mentioned the anticyclonic satellites. Not only was this thing anticyclonic and also a satellite, but this satellite was multi-vortex itself and was on the ground for around 15 minutes. This thing does not normally happen. Satellites is just a rope, and that's it. Not this thing. And also, they do not stay on the ground for that long, and this one did. Doppler on reels recorded wind speeds of 296 miles per hour. That is 476 kilometers per hour. If that is not EF5 NWS, I do not know what is. And because of the previously mentioned small funnel to wind size, many chasers were caught unaware of the extent of the wind field. This is how, very tragically, Paul Samaras, Tim Samaras, and Carl Young died. Their vehicle is in two photos of this one on the furthest right here. That is the same vehicle. The vehicle below that is one where people did survive. It was still rolled over. Mike Bettis was in this Weather Channel vehicle. And here in the bottom middle is storm chasers paying a tribute to Tim, Paul, and Carl. The death of these storm chasers cannot be talked about more, as it is extremely... these guys were prodigies. These guys were at the very top of the storm chaser field. They had so much knowledge and so much expertise. So what went wrong? Like I said, it was the wind field. I know about this. There's a video about them that'll actually never get released. The person who has the video said that he won't do it. Of him who's directly in front of the Samaras' vehicle. You see in his rearview mirror the headlights of this vehicle, and that they are both right at the very edge of this monster's wind field, of the main body of the tornado's wind field, I should say. The tornado is 2.6 miles wide, like I said. So they are at the very edge of that. Both of them are flooring it, but you see this vehicle's headlights slowly get farther and farther away. The person who survived and was in front of this vehicle said that he had the pedal to the metal and was only going 40 miles per hour. That's insane. Moving on from this very tragic note, and it's a hard note to get away from. We have to. The fourth notable and the last one here. The Weldon Spring to Riverview, St. Louis, Missouri, EF3. This is pictured here as the only EF3 here. Of course, as you can see, there's even an EF2 and 3 EF1, so it's an EF0 that happened in the St. Louis metro area. It's the most notable of them. It's a 3 that passed 52.3 kilometers, maxed out at a mile wide, and thankfully only injured 2. Surprisingly large amount is known about this EF3 because it happened in St. Louis. The touchdown occurred at around 1950, and it soon crossed I-64. very soon after that, a middle school roof was ripped open and tossed 91 meters. This thing had reached max intensity east-northeast of Weldon Spring and was mainly EF1 or EF2 damage, though. So that's thankful because this thing passed in a metro area. This thing would down 2-foot thick trees at the very end of its life. Not tall, 2-foot thick trees. And again, thankfully, this tornado only injured 2 people. The significance of this event cannot be understated simply because of the El Reno monster. But this event overall consisted mostly of high precipitation cells, had a fairly large amount of unusual tracks. The Bennington and El Reno are perfect examples. And this event is the first and thankfully only case of a storm chaser / researcher death from a tornado. I don't want to have these videos be tragic or sad, but when something like that happens, it of course has to be covered, and something like that is not easy to talk about nor think about. Again, has to be talked about, though, has to be remembered for their sake, you know? So, but that will have to bring an end to this video. There are a few videos on YouTube, actually, that you can look up about the lessons learned from El Reno. I believe that the NWS itself has a website on there. Sorry, the NWS itself has a video on that. And Skip Talbot, I believe, has 2 separate videos. So go check those out if you want a more detailed explanation on El Reno. I'll see you guys in the next Outbreak video.